Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is YAHMAD. Today we're going to be looking at some spreadsheet examples from paper 3 from the CIE ICT IGCSE course. So we're going to be looking at examples from 2017. So we've got a November, March and a summer papers, examples from 2016 and also some examples from 2015 and 2014. So hopefully we're going to be able to see the differences between each paper. Now spreadsheets can be unpredictable, especially the newer exam papers. So we're going to be looking at differences, the new things which may have come up in recent years. Okay, so before we look at the November 2017 paper, I want to go through this quick example here. Okay. So what we have is 4 students, Billy, Bob, James and Jack. They got scores for exam 1 and exam 2. Each exam has a maximum score of 75. So what we have here is the percentage. So in the first exam, Billy scored 64 out of 75, which is 85%. To work out the percentage, what we've done is basically we've divided the exam 1 score by the maximum score. So we're trying to work out the percentage for exam 1 only. So we basically divided the exam 1 score by the maximum score, and then what we've done is change the formatting of the cell into a percentage, which you can see was selected. Okay, so what I'm going to do is change the formatting back to general. I'm going to delete the contents of the cells, just drag this down. Now one way of doing this is if I divide the exam 1 score by the maximum score and multiply by 100, this will give me a percentage, so it's giving me 85 again. Now if I click on a percentage icon here to change it into a percentage, you'll notice it's gone to 8,533%, which is not possible. So for that reason, let me change that back into general again. If we just divide this cell by the maximum score, and then if I press enter, and then when I change that into a percentage, you'll notice it's appeared in the correct format. So we don't need to multiply by 100. If you just simply divide the exam score by the maximum score and then change the contents of this cell into a percentage, it will automatically work out the percentage for you. Okay, so what we have here is the highest score. So to work out the highest score, I've used the equal max function to look in this range to get the highest score. So the highest score at the moment is 87%. The average score, again I used the equal average function and highlighted this range to work out the average score. Okay, so what we have here is the percentage change in exam results. Okay, so if I double click on this cell here, now to work out the difference, we basically have to work out a difference between these cells here. Okay, so it's B5 minus C5, and then we divide by D5, the maximum score. So what we need to find out first is the difference between the first exam score and second exam score, and then we can divide by D5 and then apply the percentage function here. So as you can see, we have 0% here because both exam scores are exactly the same. What if I change this to 75 and this grade to 0? You would expect to see a 100% difference. Okay, because in one exam they achieved 100% and in the second exam they achieved 0%, so the difference would be 100%. So let me just press Ctrl Z to go back. Okay, now in this cell here you can see we've basically replicated, if I double click, the contents of this cell here, so equal A5. So if I did change Billy's name to Bobby, for example, automatically the contents of this cell is being replicated according to what's in cell A5. So if I change that back to Billy, you'll see the cell has changed back to Billy. So if I click on Bob, it's referenced into the contents of this cell, so equal A6. If I click on James, equal A7. Okay, and the last thing before we go to the example is we've got a name here. So what we want to find out is the highest achiever. So what I've done is a VLOOKUP. So if we double click, okay, so we're looking up the highest score, which is 87, and the table array is from here, as you can see the green box. So it looks up the highest score, and we want to look in the third column, and as you can see we look up 87 in the third column, and the output should be an exact match, and it should give us Bob, and we have Bob here. So hopefully now, using what we've done in the example, we're going to complete the November 2017 question. Okay, so let's have a look at the first question then. So you work for the Cosmo Tours Board, who use a spreadsheet to analyze data about cruise ship passengers in the Caribbean. Use the most efficient methods in your work. So in cell F19, enter a formula to calculate the average number of visitors a month for this destination. Round it down to nearest visitor. So F19 is this cell here, and the clue is we have to use a formula, not a function. So we basically have to work out the average visitors per month. So what we do, we type in equals. We click on visitors for this period. Okay, and then for division, you have to write in slash. So again, look at the title for the clue, and then by the month. So it's going to basically divide the contents of this cell by the number of months. Okay, so this is giving us an answer. So now we have to round this down to nearest visitor. Okay, so what we can do, we can come to here. Okay, to round down to nearest visitor, we can convert this into an integer. So after the equals, if you type in equal int, so it rounds the number down to the nearest integer, double click to open a bracket. The formula inside is basically the number, that's what represents that. And then we can close the bracket. So if I close the bracket, you'll notice this has now been converted into an integer value. Okay, the next question. In cell H19, enter a formula, so this is H19, to calculate the percentage change in the number of visitors between 2014 and 15. So basically we have to do what we did up here, so we have to work out the difference between the exam scores and then divide by the maximum score. So again, here we're going to do a similar thing where we have to take away the number of visitors from 2015 to 2014, and then we can divide by 2014. So equal this cell here minus this cell here. So I'll put this into brackets because whatever we get inside of the brackets we have to divide by the number of visitors for 2014. So we're using this cell because this was a starting point. So we want to see how much more visitors we had in 2015, either as an increase, as a positive, or as a negative. Okay. So then when I convert this into a percentage, you can click on this icon up here, you can see we've had 19% increase. So the figure here was obviously much bigger than what we have here, as you can see. Replicate the formula entered in for each destination. Apply appropriate formatting to your spreadsheet. So we've already applied the percentage formatting here, and I'll replicate this one here. So you'll notice the next three examples are negative numbers. So minus 17, minus 1, minus 9, and that's because we had more visitors in 2014 than what we had in 2015. Okay, the next question. New data has just arrived for Barbados in March. Edited data in the spreadsheet show these changes. So let's go to Barbados. Okay, so Barbados is this one here, and now it's going to be up to March 2015. So what we need to change is up here, so not February anymore, so it's up to March now. So, and we need to keep the formatting consistent, so we can just type in MAR. Okay, so in 2015 we've got an extra 70,041 visitors. So edit the data in the spreadsheet to show these changes. Okay, so what we can do is we can change this into a formula equal plus 70,041. So don't include the comma. Enter, and that's given us the updated value. Okay, as you can see, we have a formula here, so to get rid of the formula and just to have a value, we can copy and then we can paste this back in as a value. Okay, so that's that done. And actually the last thing we've got to do is, since it is January to March, now the months also has to be increased. So from 2, it's not till February anymore, it's till March. So now we have to say 3 months. And you'll notice this value here has changed accordingly as well. Okay, so in cell E24, so E24 is this cell here. Enter a function to calculate the total number of visitors to all destinations in 2015. So now we're going to be using a function. So if I type in equals sum, because what we want to do is add up all the number of visitors from 2015. So let me double check before I press enter. So enter a function to calculate total number of visitors to all destinations in 2015. So I've done an equals sum and I'm adding up this range of cells here. Okay, in cell E25, enter a function to calculate the average number of visitors to all destinations in 2015. Again, we have to use a function, so equal average. And then we can highlight this range here and close the bracket. And that gives us the average number of visitors to all destinations in 2015. In cell E26, enter a function and calculate the number of visitors to the most popular cruise destination in 2015. So what we can do is we can do an equal max. Okay, so the equal max will find out the most popular tourist destination. So equal max, highlight this range. So in 2015, yeah, in the correct range. And it's given me this value here, which is obviously the highest value in this range here. Okay, cell I19, so is this going to be the cell here? Use a formula to copy the value held in B19. So B19 is this cell here. So it's basically similar to what we did up here. So we have to use equal and then click on this cell to reference the cell, and then we can press enter. So we're going to do the same thing, so equal, and we want to basically use a formula to copy the value held, so equal, and then we can click on this cell here, so equal B19, and then if we drag this down, you can see it's basically replicating the contents held in these cells here relative to the position. So Barbados obviously is in this row here, so if I press enter, it should show me Barbados. Okay, so we've replicated the formula for each destination. Last thing we have to do for this paper, and it's the same thing now which we did up here. In cell E27, which is this cell here, enter a function to return the name of the most popular cruise destination in 2015. So basically what we did up here, we had to get the name Bob. So what we wanted to find was the highest achiever from exam 1, and we used the highest score as a lookup value in this table array here, and the output was in this column here. So we're going to do the exact same thing. So equal VLOOKUP, and we want to look up the maximum value, which is this one here, so number of visitors to the most popular destination in 2015, comma, the table array will include, the first column will have the lookup value in, and then we have to go right up until we get to the 5th column, which has the destination. So we don't need to absolute cell reference this because we're not going to be dragging down this formula, comma. So the column index for the destination is in the 5th column, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we want is the exact match. So what we're expecting to see is basically Bahamas had the most amount of visitors, so hopefully we can see Bahamas in a cell when I press enter. Okay, which is correct. So this paper was slightly different to previous papers, especially this part here where we had to include a formula to replicate the contents of this cell here. Okay, these parts here to work out the average is just a bit of maths. Okay, so we have to divide the visitors for this period by the actual number of months. Okay, the percentage change, again, we don't need to multiply by 100. As soon as you convert the value to a percentage, it will appear in the correct format. Right, so that's the end of November 2017. Let's have a look at March 2017. So again, this exam paper was different, was quite tricky, so hopefully we'll have a look in a second. Okay, so employees are paid to work for 50 weeks in each year and get 2 weeks unpaid holiday. Some employees are paid weekly and some are paid a monthly salary. So let's look at the first question. So in cell F4, this cell here, enter a formula to calculate the weekly wage for this employee using the annual salary, which is the information here. The formula must display the weekly wage only if the pay type is W. If the pay type is not W, do not display anything in the cell here. So the key part of this question is display the weekly wage if the pay type is W. So the first thing we have to do is run an if statement. So we have to check for this condition. So if the pay type is W, okay, then we have to, for the true statement, use a formula function to calculate the weekly wage, okay, using the annual salary here. If it's not true, so if it's not W, do not display anything in this cell. Okay, so first part is an equal if. So we want to check if this cell here, D4, is equal to W, so speech marks W. And if it's true, and this is the first time I've seen this, we're going to put a function into a true statement. So we're going to use a VLOOKUP. Okay, because we want the annual salary, you'll notice a job code is here and also here, so we can use a job code as a lookup value, comma, let's go highlight the table array. So I'm just going to have to type in absolute cell referencing automatically, or manually should I say, comma, the annual salary is in the third column, so I'm going to type in number 3, comma, and I want the exact match, close the bracket. So basically whatever we get from this VLOOKUP, then we have to divide by 50 weeks, okay, because only the employees are only paid for 50 weeks. So whatever we get from this VLOOKUP, we have to divide by 50 to get a weekly salary, comma. Now run a false now. If this is not true, do not display anything in this cell. So if I put 2 speech marks in and close the brackets and press enter, I'm expecting to see a value because the payment type is true, it's W. Okay, I'm going to replicate this formula down, and this cell is blank. The reason this cell is blank because if I double click, D6 is not equal to W, so therefore it's showing the false part of the statement. Okay, so in cell G4, enter a formula to calculate the monthly salary for this employee. Now, if the pay type is S, okay, so we have to work out the monthly salary if the pay type is S. So let me make this bold. If the pay type is not S, do not display anything in this cell. So basically we're going to repeat what we did, but rather than the pay type being equal to W, it's going to be equal to S. And because we're working out the monthly salary, we have to divide the annual salary by 12 months. Okay, so equal if, again we're checking for this cell here, D4, if it's equal to S. And if it's true, again we're going to do a VLOOKUP. So we're going to look up a job code because this appears in a table array. I'm going to highlight the table array and manually type in the absolute cell referencing, because when I record for some reason it doesn't allow me to type in FN and F4. Again, we want to look into the third column to get the annual salary. So column index will be 3. We want the exact match. Okay, and then I want to divide the value of this VLOOKUP by 12 to get a monthly salary. And if the pay type is not S, do not display anything in the cell, so then we could put speech marks. The reason I've done divide by 12 beforehand, obviously you can't divide a blank space by a number. Okay, so when I press enter, I'm not expecting to see any value. It's going to show the false value because the logical test is D4 is equal to S. D4 is not equal to S, so it should give me a blank cell. But if I do drag this down, it should give me a value in here. So that's a monthly salary. Okay, so this exam was different. For the first time in the if statement, for the truth statement, we saw a VLOOKUP. So you need to be careful. Each exam is looking more and more different. Okay, so let's have a look at the June 31 exam paper. So this is again from 2017. We're just going to be looking at the last part of the exam, which was quite difficult. So extract only the employees where the job description includes a developer who work more or less than their contracted hours. Okay, so we have two methods of working out who works more or less than their contracted hours. Okay, so both methods involve including an extra row or column. So we're going to insert an extra column. Okay, I'm just going to call this same. So the first thing we could do is we could do an if statement. So equal if. We want to see if this cell is equal to this cell here. Okay. And if it's the same, then we can say yes, they're the same. And if it's not the same, we can say no. Close a bracket. Okay. And we can drag this down. So basically, who work more or less than their contracted hours. So when I do the filter, what I want to filter out is basically not the same. So we only want to include no. So this will show hours which are either more or less than the contracted hours. Okay. Let me just clear that filter again. Just going to move this to the top here so it doesn't get taken away from the filter. Okay, another method of doing this as well is just let me delete this. This is maybe perhaps easier. So I did use the if statement in my video previously, but I think this method is easier. So what we can do is equal this cell minus this cell. Now if it's the same, it's going to give us 0. Okay, so we can drag this down. Obviously what we want to show is extract only the employees where the job description includes developer. Okay, we could do that in a moment. And who work more or less than their contracted hours. So if I click on the filter now, basically if I deselect 0, it's only going to show people who work less or more than their contracted hours. So that's another way of doing this as well. Okay, and then the job description includes developer. So if we click on job description, text filters, contains, and then type in developer, and that's given us the right answer. And then what we can do is hide this column, so we don't need to show the method, we can hide that column. So there was two options. You could have done the if statement where you could have checked if the contracted hours and the hours worked are the same, and if it's true you can say yes, if it's not true you can say no, and then we can basically filter out and only show the false statement where it was no. Or we can minus the contract hours to the hours worked. If it was 0, obviously then that will show there's no difference. What we want to show is hours which are either less or more than the contracted hours. Right, now we're going to be moving on to June 32, 2017 spreadsheet example. Okay, so what we have here is some information about internet service providers from different regions, download speeds and upload speeds. So calculate from all of the data the average download speed for each region. Okay, because we're going to have a criteria for each region, we're going to be using an average if. So to make my life easier, the first thing I'm going to do is put this table into alphabetical order according to region. So if I highlight the table, go to custom sort, select region A to Z. Now the reason I'm doing this is, again, using what I used in the November 2017 example. If I click on equal, you can replicate the contents of a cell. So I'm going to be doing the same thing. So rather than typing out the name of each region, I'm going to replicate. So now, because it's in alphabetical order, it's going to be easy to see the different regions. So we start off with Brittany, equal, then it's Eastern, equal, then we have the next one, which is Ghent, equal, next one is Midlands, Northeast. So it's easier to do this rather than having it in a jumbled up order. So after Northeast, we've got South Wales, and then Southwest. I think that's the last one. Yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different regions. So what do we want to find out? The average download speed. So we're looking for this. So we're going to be using an average if, because we have a criteria and we want to find out the averages by the criteria. So equal average if. Okay, so it's very similar to the SUMIF, but we're not adding up values by criteria, we're going to work out the average. So the range is basically where does the criteria fall into. It falls within this range here. I'm going to absolute cell reference these cells. So I have to do it again manually. This is going to be absolute, which means when I replicate the formula, it's not going to move anywhere. The region will be relative, so when I drag down, it's going to look in the relative position to the row. So if I'm in this cell here, it's going to be looking in this cell here, which contains South Wales, comma, and the average range is the download speed for each region. So again, the range and the average range are normally parallel to each other. So let me put a $sign in. Okay, so normally you'd use a shortcut key for absolute cell reference in F1 and F4 or Shift and F4. Because I'm recording, it doesn't allow for it for some reason. Then if I press enter, you'll see I've got two ranges which are absolute. So this one here, and then the last one here as well. So the average range and then the range are absolute. So when I replicate the average of down, these two ranges will not move position. Only the criteria is relative, and this will move down according to its position. Okay, you can drag it down. Right, so now we have to create and fully label a chart to compare this data. So the best chart we can create for this example would be to create a bar chart. Okay, and then what we can do is just delete this legend here. Okay, we can add layouts. So we can add a chart title. So if you're using the most recent version of Excel, you may want to select layout 9. I'm just going to use the older version. So axis, so 1 for this axis, and an axis horizontally as well. Okay, so you make sure you've got an appropriate title. Whoops, by double clicking and typing in a title for the axes, okay, and a title for the regions. I might as well do it actually, won't take me too long. Regions. Download speeds. And a suitable title will be average download speed by region. Okay, so again, this was the different part of the 2017 June 32 paper. This was a part where a lot of people got confused. So the first thing I would have done is sorted the table by region, alphabetical order, and then we would have replicated the contents of these cells. Okay, once you've done that, then it's quite straightforward to do the average if. Based on a criteria, you're looking in this range for the criteria, and then the average range will be from this range here. So basically, we got 2 from Brittany, so it's going to basically work out the average just from these 2 values for Brittany. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to November 2016. Okay, so let me just zoom out slightly. So this spreadsheet contains information about resorts, locations, number of rooms. Okay, so what we have to work out is the advertising cost for each record. Okay, and also the number of rooms by location as well. So this question includes a nested if. And for the nested if, I'm going to be using this diagram to explain each part. Okay, and also a sum if to work out the number of rooms by location. In cell G6, enter a formula to calculate the advertising cost, which is the rate, so the value in F4, multiplied by 25 if the resort has 50 or less rooms, 75 if the resort has more than 50 but less than 101 rooms, 150 if the resort has more than 100 but less than 201 rooms, 200 if the resort has more than 200 rooms. So we're going to be using the cell F6 as the cell for the logical test. This cell contains a number of rooms. Okay, the first logical test we're going to do is to check to see if the room is 50 or less. So it's going to be F6 less than or equal to 50, and if that statement is true, then a true statement will be either 25 or the rate multiplied by 25. Okay, the next condition, and now we're going to focus on the less than 101 part. So if F6 is less than 101, then it's going to be the rate multiplied by 75. Okay. If F6 is less than 201, then it's going to be a rate multiplied by 150. If any of these statements are not true, then we're just going to do the false statement, which will be the rate multiplied by 200. Okay, the reason I'm focused on the less than part is, let me explain using this diagram here. So we got cutoff point for each condition, for each logical test. So the cutoff point for this one here, it has to be 50 or less. So the room in F6 has to be 50 or less, and if it's true, then we carry out this statement here. Okay. The next one, we're saying less than 101 rooms. By default, we're going to start by this position here. So if the number was not less than 50, then we're going to start from 51, 52, going all the way up to the cutoff point, which was less than 101. So if the number was not in this range, we start from here and we go up to the cutoff point, which is here. Okay, so if the number of rooms does not fall into this range here, by default we start from this range here, so more than 100, so 101, and we go to the cutoff point here, which is less than 201. Okay, so by focusing on less than parts, you have a cutoff point. If the number has not fallen within this range, then we start from here. If it doesn't fall within this range, then we start from here, going upwards to the cutoff point, which is this point here. And if any of these statements are not true, then the false statement will be used. So let me do the actual formula, and then it might make some more sense. So, and I'm going to show you a couple of different methods. The first method will be a little bit more longer, and then we'll simplify it at the end. So equal if. Okay, so the logical test is going to be F6, so it's good to plan your answer in advance. So if it's equal to or less than 50, that's a logical test, comma, the true will be this value here. I'm going to lock this in because when we replicate the cell, we don't want to lose this value, multiplied by 25. So rate multiplied by 25. That's the first condition done. If that's not true, we're not in a false yet. Let's check for the next condition. So if, again, it's going to be f6 less than 101. So look at the first one as an example, less than 101. And if that's true, it's going to be the rate. I'll do the absolute cell referencing at the end, just to save myself time. Multiplied by 75. Okay, comma, if that's not true, let's check for the next condition. So the room is now less than 201, so we're focusing on this part now. Okay, and if that's true, it's going to be the rate multiplied by 150. And if any of these statements are not true, then we're just going to go to the false. Okay, for the false, we don't need to write an if statement. So if it's not, this number doesn't fall into this range or this range or this range, then it has to be the false. So it's basically going to be this multiplied by 200. I'm just going to absolute cell reference my rate F4. So this is a long way of doing it. It's a slightly easier way of doing it. And then we need to close the brackets until we get back to a black one. Okay, so we press enter and it's giving me an advertising cost. Okay, so it's basically the room in this case was less than 50, so it's this price here multiplied by 25. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this actually a little bit more easier. So I'm actually going to click up here. I'm going to get rid of the rate. So this is probably the way I would do it. So if it's less than or equal to 50, we're only going to show 25. If it's less than 101, we're just going to show 75. Okay, for the true statement. If it's less than 201, we show 150 and then 200. So here we got 25. If I drag this down, I expect to see 75 because it's more than 50. Okay, but it's less than 101 rooms. Now what you can do at the end or at the start, if you want to do it at the start, I prefer at the end, you can multiply by the rate and then we can absolute cell reference this. Okay, so that's actually making it easier. So both methods work, but the second method is easier because you're not having to replicate F4 into each true statement. Okay, so what I did in the end was, if we just delete, but it's good to know both methods, but it's best to use the most efficient methods in the exam. So if the room was if F6 was less than or equal to 50, then we showed 25. If F6 was less than 101, we showed 75. If F6 was less than 201, then we showed 150. As a false, we just showed 200. Okay, and then closing the brackets, then we can multiply against the rate. Enter. So we drag this down, replicate. Because there's a cost, let's put it into currency. Okay. Right, in cell B27, enter formula to add the number of rooms for the location in column A. So we have the locations here, okay, in column A. This is going to be our criteria, and we have the locations here. So, and then we want to add up the number of rooms for locations. So we're going to use a sum if because we're adding with a criteria. So if I type in equal sum if, now this is a criteria and it falls into which range it falls into location. So I'm going to highlight this cell range here. Let's put the absolute cell reference in, comma, so this is going to be absolute. When I do replicate, it's going to stay in one place. The criteria will be in location in column A. Okay, will be the location in column A, which is going to be relative. So when you drag it down, it's going to change position according to location or position. And then the sum range is add the number of rooms. So the number of rooms is in this column here. So we're going to highlight this range. Has to be parallel to this one here. Put dollar signs in. Close the brackets. Enter. And then we can drag this down. And don't panic because you see zeros. The reason we only have values for northwest and west is because there's only two locations, northwest or west. Okay, we don't see any of the other locations, so that's the correct answer. Okay, so just before we do move on, with regards to the nested if, focus on the less than parts. Okay, so by default, if the number doesn't fall into here, we're starting from here anyway, and we go all the way up to the cutoff point, which is made obvious in a less than part, so less than 101. So we go from here to less than 101. So look at these numbers here as examples and guides as well. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at March 2016. For the March 2016 exam paper, we're going to be using this test table. So I've got some values in here. I'm just going to delete the values because in the exam you'll have no values. You'll have to type in the values yourself to check to see if the formulas are working. So you'll have to type in some values. But let's start with the first question. So in cell E7, enter a formula to calculate the price per square meter. Okay, which is price divided by the area. So we'll have to type in a formula to divide the price by the area. Okay. Okay, and as you can see, we get no answer. So in the exam, you might be asked to type in some values yourself. So if I type in, just make up a price at 25, and then the area, let's say 500. So now because I've got these values, it's worked out the price per square meter. Okay, so let's make, because I have to round this to 0 decimal places, so let's make the price a little bit different. Okay, so I have to round this down to no decimal places. So if we go to equal, if we type in round, rounds the number down to a number, rounds the number to a specified number of digits. So if we click in round, got my number, comma, to 0 digits, and then I can close the brackets. Okay, so in the exam you will be expected to write in some data to test. So in cell G5, which is this cell here, enter a formula to calculate the travel cost to this property. This will be 10 rupees plus 7.5 if the distance is less than 5. Okay, the distance multiplied by 1.5 if the distance is not less than 6. Okay, so I'm just going to put in a number here, so 3 kilometers. Okay, and it's going to be an if statement. So equal if. Click up here. So for the logical test, we're checking the distance. So enter a formula to calculate the travel cost to this property. This 10 rupees part we can do at the end. So 7.5 if the distance is less than 6. So if we click on this cell for the distance, if that's less than 6, we're going to say 7.5 will be the cost. Comma, if it's false, oh sorry, it's not 7, I need to put a dot in there. Okay, now if it's false, okay, what we're going to say is the distance multiplied by 1.5. So then we can click on this cell here, multiplied by 1.5. and if I press enter, we've got 7.5. The reason we got 7.5 is because the distance is less than 6. Now if I typed in 7, okay, what's happened is the distance has been multiplied by 1.5 because now the false part of the statement is showing. Okay, what we needed to do was to add also 10 rupees. So now, because I've done the if statement, I can click on plus 10 for the 10 rupees part. Okay, so that's giving me this value here. Round the travel cost up to the whole rupee, so we have to round it up. So round the travel cost up, so we have to do before the if, round up, and we want to round it up to the whole rupee, so we can again put in 0. Close the brackets. Okay, so that's gone up. Right, so now we have to look at the test tables. So complete the unfinished test plan in your evidence document. So I've just copied and pasted the evidence document here, so it's on the same sheet. Okay, replace letters A and B with suitable headings. So it's going to be these headings here that need to be replaced. Okay, so this cell here, we're going to change from A into expected outcome. And we're going to change this cell from B to actual outcome. Okay, so replace the letters A and B with suitable headings. So I've done that. Choose 3 pieces of test data to test the formula using step 18. Step 18 was actually this step here. So we want to see if this formula is working. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of this, I'm just going to print screen this, paste, and then we just crop this out. Okay, let me just zoom out a little bit. Here we go. So if this was in the evidence document, you can easily copy and paste just the values. I'm just going to have to put that into here. We're checking for G7. G7 has the if statement up in, which has been rounded. So let me just make this a bit bigger. Okay, choose 3 pieces of test data to test the formula. So we have to change values in this cell here because this cell will dictate what will appear here. So if we change this to 6, for example, it's going to change the contents of this cell here. So the 3 pieces of test data which we're going to choose are a value below 6. The reason I'm choosing 6 is this is part of the logical test. So if I make this bold, so if the distance is less than 6, so let's choose a value below 6, so 3. And the reason I've chosen this value is below 6. Just going to format this table actually, so all of text is wrapping. Okay, alignment, wrap the text, just makes it fit into the box. Okay, the next value I'm going to choose is going to be 6, which is equal to 6, obviously. So value is equal to 6. This should basically give us a false statement because obviously if you look at the if statement, okay, if it's not less than 6, so less than 6 means 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So if it is 6, it should give us this false statement. Okay. Then I'm going to choose a number above 6, which is easy to calculate. So which is going to be 10. So value above 6 easy to calculate. So we can guess what the value will be. Easy to calculate. Okay, just make that box a bit bigger. Right, so the expected outcome, so let's type in 3. And expected outcome was 18. Okay. Value is equal to 6. This is giving me 19. Okay. And the value above 6 and easy to calculate, we said 10. This should give us 25. So let me see if I type in 10 here. It's giving me 25. Okay. So then the next thing we have to do is we have to say if the formula works. So yes, yes, no action taken. And for the actual outcome, what we need to do is to provide print screens. So take screenshots from your tests and place them into your test plan. Okay, so what we need to do next is to take a print screen. So I've typed in 10 here, it's giving me 25. I'm going to print screen, try that again. Double click, crop. Obviously your test table will be in your evidence document. So I'm going to crop this part off here. Okay, what I might have to do is just increase the size of these so I can fit them all in. Okay, so this was a value above 10. Again, let's put 6 in. Should give us 19. Crop this. And the last one we said was going to be 3. Okay, so that's pretty much the test table completed. So with the test table, try and pick suitable data that's going to test each part of the formula. Okay, so the reason I chose a number below because I wanted to check if the true part of the formula was working. So if a number below 6, then it would have been basically 7.5, okay, plus the 10 rupees, and because it's been rounded up, that's why we got the 18. Okay, so and then I want to check if I typed in the equal value, it would go to the false statement, which it did. So when I typed in 6, okay, basically what it did was it multiplied the kilometers by 1.5, so it's adding an extra 50% on, plus the 10 rupees, which is giving me this value here. Okay, so we've come to the end of this March 2016 example. In the second part of this video, I will complete the June 31, the June 32, November 2015, June 31, 2015, November 2014, and there's another nested if as well. So hopefully that will be coming in the second part of this video. So please like and share and show your support to the channel and subscribe below. And please leave your comments as well for any further videos you would like to see or you'd like me to create. Thank you very much for your time. I'm just going to zoom in on my test table but just before we go, so it's really obvious. Cell reference, that's where the formula is. That's the formula we used. These were the test data which we typed in, the reasons, what we expected, print screen of the actual outcome. Did it work? Yes, we got the expected outcomes. There was no action required. Again, thank you very much for your time.